We have thousands of people who go missing every year, just here in the United States, and there's no discrimination on the missing. They are young, old, black, white, male or female, even children. It's time to stop. Here at Coles is still missing, and they've not found any new clues. It's women who are pregnant, it's women who have jobs, and it's women who have not seen even fetal abductions. Have you seen me? Welcome to my channel, everyone. Thank you so much for caring.
Hello guys, welcome to Chasing the Murder Talking News. We are on Life Beyond the Grave, Part 4. We're continuing Chad Daybell and Tammy Daybell background. There is a lot that I could put in here. I'm just trying to choose the best pieces and try to break it down as best as I can. Because for you to understand what they're thinking about, what they are following, you have to understand how they're attached to their religion, their beliefs, and how that kind of jets out from that main system. Most people being, they are Christian, but not Mormon or Jewish, are not familiar with how the Mormon system works. Even after all the research that I've done, it's still hard to tackle. Tammy has just said yes to marrying Chad Daybell. On March 9th, 1990, the two get married in the Manti Temple. According to Chad and some of his writings, he says that Tammy is initially the main breadwinner of the household, especially at the beginning of their marriage, while Chad continued to work on his education at BYU. Chad said, quote, "I was still on a scholarship and progressing through BYU's journalism program, while still working a few hours each week at the cemetery." He said, "We suddenly felt rich. We were eating out a lot, going to concerts, buying whole boxes of symphony candy bars. Life was great," end quote. It's at this point in his life that he's able to put the future out of his mind, or at least for a period of time. He also says that he has an adorable, loving wife and that they're having a lot of fun together. Since they've been married, Chad said that he feels that he's growing very close to Tammy's parents, especially close to Tammy's mother, which I want to avoid mentioning their names if I can. And the reason that Chad says that he feels that he could relate to Tammy's mother and that she could understand him is due to a belief or something that she experienced herself. Tammy's mom tells Chad about an out-of-body experience that she had herself. And Chad is absolutely enthralled by this idea, and he talks to her about it, and this fuels him up to inquire deeper about that, that incident that she has. Chad is growing more confident about these new ideas and beliefs that he has, including visions. And now he's dabbling a bit in out-of-body experiences. He's inquiring about that, but he's still kind of keeping all this stuff to himself. Chad's senior year, he is working for the assistant city editor, and that's in the fall semester of 1991. Chad says it's at that point that Tammy is insistent that they are to start a family. Chad seems to be unsure. He gives in and lets his wife take the reins on this one. And at this point, he says that he admits that he's the one that has visions, but his wife is the one to follow when it comes to the Holy Ghost. Also around this time, Chad is taking a computer course, and he starts to overcome his fear of computers. And as he walked across the stage for his college graduation, his wife Tammy was 8 months pregnant with their first child, and she was showing. Chad Daybell was scared. He was worried because he wasn't sure how things were going to work out because, after all, he didn't even have a job yet. Not only that, Tammy tells him that she wants to quit her job after she gives birth so that she could care for the family. But she reassures Chad that he'll be fine and he'll get a job and everything will turn out great. Chad is working as a copy editor for the Ogden Standard Examiner. It seems that Tammy was right. He said that he and Tammy would go to the Weber County Library, and he said when he walked through the library, he imagined what it would be like to see his name on the spine of the books in that library. Chad says that at the moment he's just working in the sports section of the newspaper. He's not really doing what he enjoys the sports, but he's not really writing yet. Now, I'm not going to concentrate on where he works too much, guys. I didn't focus on that a lot. He did work as a managing editor for the Cedar Fort Inc., which is a base publisher in Utah. And he did this until he actually established his own publishing company, which we'll talk about shortly. Shortly after this, he and Tammy have their first son, Garth. Around the same time period, Chad and Tammy move into a bigger apartment. In this tragic story, we learn that Chad Daybell is very fascinated by the afterlife. He's also, what we're about to learn, fascinated about trying to get the past relatives baptized, which they call baptism for the dead. Chad says, as a church, we talk about family history a lot, focusing on the souls trapped in a spirit prison who need us to do their temple work. And for those of you that are not familiar with the religion, they don't necessarily have a hell or a heaven. And the closest I can match what he's talking about is kind of like purgatory or limbo. If you haven't lived to the righteous way, according to the Mormon doctrine, there's a possibility that your spirit could be sent to a prison where you await for angels, to make it more relatable, come down and talk to you and prepare you to try at life again. Of course, it's much more complex than that, but we don't have time to cover that again. So it's important that they're able to save these individuals that are stuck in that spirit prison. Chad Daybell says he's able to receive guidance, give guidance. And the way that he does this is he does like family counseling on the other side of the veil, similar to meetings that are being held, on earth. And then those behind the veil also have meetings to figure out how to help people here on earth. So the baptism for the dead in the Mormon religion, they have what they call the baptism of the dead, like I said. And it's performed in this round mini pool inside a temple or church that belongs to the LDS. And so a relative will be dunked for a member that they have submitted to the church, pray over them, so they have that opportunity to be saved for more familiar terms, because they feel that there's a chance that some of these people die without that opportunity. So basically, the LDS church is teaching that the afterlife who have been baptized by proxy are free to accept or reject the ordinance done on their behalf. They don't have to have it. And so this baptism on the behalf of the deceased individual is not binding if the individual chooses to reject it in afterlife. So it's the early 1990s, and Chad and Tammy are doing extensive genealogy research on both Tammy's family and his. And of course, this is done at the temple. And they say that they're able to submit at least 100 people, their paperwork of old ancestors for the baptism of the dead. For some brief history, the baptism of the dead is mostly practiced by the LDS, and it's been practiced since about 1840. Elder Russell M. Nelson, which is considered a prophet of this religion and a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles, which is the highest leaders of this church, as well as prophets. He says, quote, "The purpose of the family history work is to obtain the names and data of our ancestors so that the temple ordinances can be performed on their behalf," end quote. So when you hear about Mormons doing family research, you understand why. Before family history was readily available, everyone researching family history knew that the Mormons were a great source to get started. And they have collected names, ancestors, as far back as I can remember. An elder of the 70s says the family history work leads us to the temple. Family history and temple work are one work. Family history research should be the primary source of names for the temple's ordinances. And temple ordinances are the primary reason for the family history research, end quote. As you can see, the top leaders agree that family history is valuable and pushed so that they can help their loved ones receive the light of God or to have another chance at life, which is hard to explain in a small amount of time. So again, refer to my older videos. There should be one there where it kind of explains the background of the Mormon religion. I can tell you this, that it used to be when they researched the family history names and then submit them to the temple or church, it would take months for that name to clear. But today they have modern technology such as computers, which makes that process very quick. So it doesn't take long in order to submit family any longer. This topic is important. I would like to cover it in more detail, but I have so much that I have to put in this thing and I can't. So basically, what we have just learned is that Chad Daybell believes that the afterlife is certain. There is a process as to this afterlife, but he also is starting to develop his own idea of the afterlife and how it works, and that's important to note. 1993. Chad has a second near-death experience. He is in California, San Diego. He's with his parents, his wife, and siblings. They're on vacation. On this particular vacation day, they visit La Jolla Cove. They got their swimsuits and they're ready to go. The Daybell's son is now 1 year old. Chad says there's an overcast and it's a bit windy that day, so Tammy decided to stay at the hotel and swim in the pool. He and a relative start swimming out a bit, and they're swimming over these rocks when he suddenly, sees this wave coming towards him. Chad and his brother actually climb a few of these rocks, and he describes them as sharp and jagged. But his brother decides that he's going to go back to shore, and Chad stays behind. He wants to stay behind because he likes looking for the neat shells that he's finding. Suddenly, he says he looks up, and there it was, a monstrous wave. And the wave actually hit him, bearing down on him. Chad describes that his dad was watching him from the beach, and he estimated that it was at least 15 feet high. At that point, Chad is very concerned about the sharp rocks surrounding him. He also considered whether or not he should try to ride the wave in. He believes that he would have surely been sliced apart by the jagged rocks. Then he hears this audible voice once again. It says, "Get down, cling to the rock." Chad did as the voice commanded. He got down, grabbed a hold of the rock, which he described to be a 2-foot wide boulder, just as the wave crashed down on him. The force of the wave was incredible, and he said it took all his strength to hold on and not be ripped away and tossed around. Then he notices his surroundings are changing, and he is surrounded by this proverbial tunnel of light. He says it wasn't really white, it was more like a yellow heat lamp. He said it felt like he was wrapped in a warm blanket or a cocoon. He felt extremely happy. He looks up, and about 10 feet above him, he can see two male figures, and he believes that one of them is his grandpa Keith. And Chad believed that the other shadow might have been Finity Daybell. He says, I was completely out of my body, standing in front of them. Keith was speaking to me and gesturing with his hands. He mentioned my children and described the roles that they would play in the future. He also explained the task I needed to accomplish. Finity didn't speak. While struggling with this wave underwater, he says that Keith continued to ask him questions like would he be willing to fulfill the assignments that he had outlined, and Chad said he agreed to do so. His grandfather makes a gesture with his hand or a motion, and Chad said then I was suddenly back in my body. At that point, Chad said that he had washed closer to shore, and as he woke up, he felt like he was wrapped in a soft, protective, heavenly cushion as other waves, propelled him over the rocks and onto the beach. He credits this heavenly cushion as the reason why he didn't sustain additional serious injuries. Chad's father and his brother run up to him and say, when I saw that wave headed towards you, I could only turn my back, expecting the worst. I was sure you were dead. At that point, Chad says that he's actually looking down at his hands and fingertips, and they are all beaten and shredded up. He goes up to the lifeguard, and he checks him out. He has to go to the hospital, and he gets several stitches. But this near-death experience is important to the story because this is something that a lot of his books and his speaking is based off of. And the most important is the long-term effect from the second incident was the fact that his personal veil had been ripped open even wider. So now he believes that this veil is very open and he's able to contact the other side, walk on the other side much easier and pretty much 24/7. Like most parents, we want our kids to do well and to achieve high goals. So Chad's father encourages Chad to go get his master's degree. He says when he goes to fill out the application that he hears another voice, and this voice is telling him to stop. He just gets a bad feeling about that. This is something he decides to throw the application in the garbage and walk out. Shortly after, Chad and Tammy, they are pregnant again. Chad is at the temple, specifically in a celestial room, and he says in a book that while Tammy was pregnant with her daughter Emma, he sees a spirit, a beautiful woman, come to him, and he believes that that is his daughter before she is born. Chad believes that this, I don't know how to word this, pre-version of Emma gives him this really comforting feeling, and also he realizes that once Emma is born, she's going to be a special person. While Tammy is pregnant with Emma, they say that Garth is quite a wild child and he's getting into cupboards and stuff and spilling things like syrup. I was not going to add this part of the story, but I found it very, very interesting because word for word at the end of this little story I'm going to tell you is something that will seem familiar if you have been watching this case very closely. And it's something that relatively come out, I guess, later. It's some of the latest news. So that had to do with Lori Vallow's audio. So the audio that she put out, I'm having trouble getting my words out, guys. So listen closely. See if you can remember and what those words are that triggered me. And I apologize if I'm butchering any names. On my next visit to Ogden Temple, Chad says, I again prayed and contemplated my family's future. And he is blessed by a vision where he is shown the children many years down the road. He says the children seemed to be in their early 20s or late teens, and they were wearing church clothes. It seemed to be a special event. So he's watching his kids interact with one another, and he's sitting about 10 feet away. He recognizes his son Garth, his oldest son. Then he notices that there are 2 other girls in this dream, an older one that had dark hair, and the other had blonde. The 4 kids talk among themselves for a moment. Then a brown-haired boy in his early teens came skipping into the room saying, "Don't forget about me. Don't forget about me." That's the part I am mentioning. Don't forget about me. Don't forget about me. Now, this will pretty much mimic or mirror a portion of Lori when she says that she's researching family history in the temple. One of the long gone ancestors come out and say, "Don't forget about me. Don't forget about me."
I saw a sister, a spirit sister. It was one of my husband's aunts, come over, and she kissed me on the cheek before she disappeared through the wall. And I'll tell you, I've had people talk to me. I was in the sealing room with my husband, and they were going through names, and we were sealing these daughters, and all of a sudden I hear this voice super loud, really loud. "Don't forget about me, don't forget about me," twice.
I wanted to throw this in here because as I've been researching and reading this book that belongs to Chad Daybell, I'm finding that there's a lot of things that Lori is mimicking from Chad's past. And it's something you need to take notice of. At the beginning of this series, I ran into an area, and I can't remember what it was. I'm going to have to go back and search. But it seemed there was something that Chad was having that happened to him that also related to Lori. Is it coincidence? Could be, I guess. All right, guys, so that I can handle this series, I'm cutting it down to 20 minutes on each episode. So I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to share one on Lori Vallow next, just to switch it up a bit, or to continue here. I want to say, guys, that if you enjoy this channel and you think I do a good job, you can donate to my PayPal or to the Patreon. It would help quite a bit. Or you can just share the video and like and subscribe. That helps as well, and I appreciate it. So I'm still dealing with an infection, guys, so I have ups and downs. If I might be a little late on the videos, maybe this week, I don't know. I hope not. I want to say thank you very much, guys, for tuning in, checking us out. Don't forget about our missing girls, and I'll see you on part 5.